Waiting for a couple more, but I do believe that the live stream has started.
You betcha. I'll be careful what I say. Good afternoon, Jenny.
Looks like there's sunshine by in the background in everyone's office. That is so lovely.
It's beautiful in Langford. Just absolutely gorgeous for a change.
Nice.
It's also really nice where Les is. I believe, Bob, that we were just waiting for James Willock now.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get another couple of minutes. Les, is that beard new? Is that the otter look? What's going on?
Yeah. It happened in December.
Oh, nice. Now you were away. Where were you?
We went to Maui for 2 weeks in December.
Nice.
Where are you at, Maui?
Sorry?
You're at Maui?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. How's the weather?
It was mixed. We had wind, very high winds for the first few days, and then torrential rainstorms for the last few days.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Nice.
I sent Jamie a text, kind of rare for him to be late.
Thanks, John. Jenny, Eddie, do you know if the trucks got out to Bamfield to get the garbage today?
That is a good question. I will see if I can answer that for you by the end of the meeting.
Thanks very much. And Brian, how do things look for this season? Are you pretty well booked up? Lots of interest?
Oh yeah, it's everybody wants to get away, so I think August is full. Yeah, it's just it'll be a busy year. Be a busy year for everybody.
Yeah, good.
We do have quorum if we wanted to start the meeting.
I'm good with that. If James jumps in, that's great. So with that, if everybody's all set, I am going to call the meeting to order at 2:03 p.m. I would like to acknowledge that with this hybrid meeting, we are attending and situated on various traditional territories. However, the work that we are doing today involves our community of Bamfield, which is situated on the traditional territories of the Hawaiian Nation, for which we are grateful that they share this beautiful and bountiful land with us. Just to let everyone know, Eddie already mentioned that this is being recorded. So to attendees and delegates, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to you via YouTube on the Regional District website. Item number 2 is the approval of the agenda. So could I get someone to make the motion to approve, including the late items requiring 2/3 of majority vote? So John Mass moves that, and it's seconded by Brian, if you don't mind doing that for me. Second it for me, Brian McKay. All in favor? Just raise your hand. I can see you. Thank you very much. That is approved. Item number 3 is minutes. We had a Bamfield Water Advisory Committee meeting held on October 20th, 22. You've had a chance to take a look at the minutes. Could someone please move those minutes. And John Mass moves the minutes, seconded by Brian McKay. All in favor? Pass. Thank you very much. We do not have any petitions, delegations, or presentations. So we will go to item number 5, correspondence for action. 5A is a letter from S. McGrath. I'll turn it over to staff for just a minute. Is there any comments from staff regarding this letter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, not too much to comment on. Letter just communicating unhappiness with the increase to the rates that occurred in January.
And any comments from the commission, John or Brian?
Not right.
If that's the case, then could I have one of you gentlemen make that motion and someone second that for me, please, to receive this information? So John makes the motion that the Bamfield Water Advisory Committee receive this item for information. Moved by John Mass, seconded by Brian McKay. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor? And that is passed. Item number 6, requests for decision. So 6A is Bamfield Water Committee Terms of Reference Review 2023. And I'll refer this to staff for opening comments, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first committee meeting of the year, we ask each committee to reconfirm their terms of reference. So we are asking that the Bamfield Water Advisory Committee reconfirm their terms of reference for 2023 as presented. I should note that any amendments to the committee terms of reference do require approval by the ACRD Board of Directors. And as well, an amendment to the terms of reference will trigger a bylaw amendment to the corresponding bylaw. We did just adjust these in November of this past year, and I'm open to any questions on this.
Thank you, Eddie. I'll turn that over to John and Brian for any comments or questions that you may have.
No questions.
That being the case, then, would one of you gentlemen like to move that motion, please?
Want me to do it this time, Joe?
So Brian McKay makes the motion that the Bamfield Water Committee reconfirm their terms of reference for 2023 as presented. And John Mass, I assume, has seconded that for us. Any comments, any questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item number 6B, Bamfield Water System Financial Plan. And who's going to handle that for me?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll talk to this initially, and I'm sure Jenny will have some pieces to add as we move through it. So we have presented to you the 2023-27 draft financial plan for the Bamfield Water System. We do see increasing operating costs over the 5 years, which has the corresponding effect on decreasing capital costs. When we look at the current budget, we see capital contributions are high in 23 and 24, but those really just reflect flow-through costs from grants that we hope to be receiving. The West Bamfield submarine replacement, of course, is the highest priority capital project in the system. And hopefully, when that is replaced, we will see a corresponding reduction in operational costs. When we're looking at the contributions to capital in 2022, the contribution was $47,895. When we look ahead, though, to year 3, 4, and 5 of the operating budget, we see that capital contributions really shrink. And this is the concern with the system when we look at aging infrastructure. So we're under 20,000 and down to 3,000 in year 5 of the financial plan for capital contributions. We did include in this draft budget a parcel tax increase of $16,240, which equates to about $66 per parcel for the 247 parcels that pay towards the parcel tax. We increased the monthly rates in January to $67 a month, and we'll be doing so again to $69 per month in July. But these really just cover the increases in our water operator contract. The 2022 requisition for Bamfield Water System was $58,160. And as mentioned, the draft budget contains that to be raised to $74,400. Under options considered, however, if a parcel tax is not supported by the committee, we could change the recommendation, which could read something like the Bamfield Water Committee recommend that the Bamfield Water Service budget be amended to reduce the parcel tax requisition by $16,240 in the 23-27 Alberta Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan to be equivalent to the prior year parcel tax amount. So we have put that out option forth for the committee, and we are happy to answer any questions on the subject.
Thanks, Eddie. And to be completely transparent, John, Brian, I did ask Terry, working with Jenny and Eddie, to consider pulling the parcel tax to try to get our annual increase down from roughly 22% to with a couple of the things that Terry has suggested, including the parcel tax would bring it down to 15%. So I did ask them to come up with some things for discussion, and that would be one of them. So with that statement, and I again, being transparent, I know Jenny and Eddie, are concerned about not having the funds available. Yesterday I did email Eddie and Jenny following the provincial budget announcement. I can't remember, was it Tuesday or Monday? I can't remember, but I think it was Tuesday. And I asked to see whether or not there was anything that was tabled that might help us with our water infrastructure challenges that we have moving forward. And maybe just before we open it up to John and Brian, Eddie, Jenny, anything further on the provincial budget?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I can answer that and speak to this a little bit, I guess, in our overall strategy. While there was nothing specific that I was able to find as of yet, as far as the provincial budget and that announcement, we're always looking, and our grant coordinator is always looking for grants that are suitable and applicable for anything within the Bamfield water system. We will continue to do that as soon as opportunities are found. We are notified and we do take those steps. When we're looking at the provincial budget, the process won't change. Our grant coordinator will be looking through it, looking for any opportunities that do arise for future grant funding. So yeah, we're always looking.
And again, thank you, Eddie. The reason I was looking for that was, would that allow us, to reduce or remove the proposed parcel tax this time around, just so that we could, come in, less than 22%. But let me open it up to John and Brian, please, now.
Any options to lower or not even have an increase in the parcel tax? It certainly doesn't really affect the recreational, people have got an investment home here, just a recreational home. I think they all view it as just part of, the cost of owning an investment. Whereas the locals are getting, there's a lot of smatterings, but the locals getting pretty fed up with every time they turn around, there's another increase. And there is. And there's nothing we can seem to do about it unless there's some money available in this budget. And I agree, Bob, there's, like he's talking $1 billion plus money available that they're going to spend. So if we can channel some of that this way, I think we'll have a little happier community.
Thanks, Brian. John, your thoughts?
No, same as Brian. Anything we can bring from the outside, obviously, would be beneficial. At the same time, I worry about lowering this. We're simply deferring a debt. And so This isn't something we're going to avoid paying. It's just something that we're going to put off paying. And unfortunately, this was done in the past for so long. Now we're in a jam. So I'd rather bite the bullet and get on with it than I would defer it. Looking at it as an investment, it wouldn't make any sense not to put the money in now. So that doesn't mean we couldn't continue to look for money from elsewhere. And sometimes if we've got some capital, we can stack it with something else, with matching. So I just, looking at what we have to repair, I can't see how we're going to dig our way out of this in any rapid method.
I wish we had a crystal ball that we could look at, 2024, not the water system, but the overall taxation for Bamfield. Could we defer this knowing that next year we're going to be in better shape, that we wouldn't, we could absorb a parcel tax increase next year and still have, a reasonable increase in taxation. What does your crystal ball look like, Jenny?
It is tough. There is a number of services besides water that Bamfield has that when we're looking at the financial plan, it's an overall increase and it is high. The other thing that we talk about in the report is that parcel taxes is just one way to generate revenue. So we can also go back and look at our water rates. One of the benefits in using water rates to generate revenue for a service is that you can, in the past, typically we've been increasing the base rate. So everyone increases their base rate. At least you pay it quarterly instead of annually. So it's slightly better than a tax, but it's still flat. Versus we can look at adjusting the consumption-based rate. So then the higher users take on a larger portion of paying that amount. So rates and generating revenue from water bills is a little bit more of a flexible system versus a parcel tax. So that's an option if we wanted to look at, it's $16,000. So if we wanted to keep the tax rate just the same in this service, we could go back and look at how can we generate $16,000 through the water rates. That would be an option. The other point that was raised, which is very important to note, is that we will continue to apply for grants, and some of those grants, we have to have matching funds that are not from Community Works. So we have to have some of our own money that we've generated in the reserve, and the reserve is not healthy. I believe Eddie mentioned, if not in this report, but in another one, that we like the good news about the DCCs and the development cost charges. Once we start generating more revenue through that, we can use that. That is essentially our own reserve money, and we can use that to leverage to get more grant money. These are not easy decisions. However, I think the point as to why staff are offering up the idea of we don't do this parcel tax this year is that it is only $16,000. Every drop counts when it comes to pennies and water. But in this sense, deferring that parcel tax increase for 1 year is not going to break the system. So if the committee chooses to keep it or to delay 1 year to do it, and we look at it again for next year, I think both of those are acceptable. It really is whatever the committee thinks they would like to do. And then also from a staff perspective, I think regardless of whether the committee gives the direction or not, we will probably investigate options for water rate increases and present that at one of the committee meetings later in the year for you to consider as well, especially if the parcel tax increase does not go forward. So I don't know if that helps at all. It's a hard decision.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball like the rest of us, or Jenny maybe perhaps, but does. But we look back, if we can look back at our history when we paid off the water system, and as a group we decided to keep the parcel tax. If we look now where we would have been if we hadn't done that, we'd be even farther off. So 16,000, like you say, it isn't a lot of money, and when you divide it up over everybody, it's little money, and it would seem more sense to me to invest it now than it would be to defer it. It's not like we're going to get away without paying it. Just my opinion.
So Brian, what are your thoughts? I wish there were another voting member. But Brian, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. It's we've got to step up now or step up later. If we deferred, but my concern is there any money available through provincial grants? Jenny, you said there's not much left in our reserves. Have you got a ballpark number?
I can answer that through the chair. So entering 223, the balance of our capital reserve was sitting at $254,000 and change. We had approximately $80,000 in our development cost charge fund.
And further to that, and I'm sure Eddie would say this, or we can talk about it later in camera, but if we were successful with a grant application for the West Bamfield transmission main, then that reserve will be allocated towards our portion that we need to contribute for that capital, which would basically draw down the reserves, which is good. It means that the money is there in order to do that high priority project if it is awarded. But moving forward with other works and other capital projects, we will not have much money left.
Yeah, and that transmission line, that looks pretty promising. If we can get money for that. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, we'll put us down to net zero. Are there any, I know it's, anyway, are there any other venues to apply for grant money for this?
Yes, and I think that the next step Eddie's working on, and maybe I'll let you speak more to this, is working on what our next priority projects are, and we're hoping to look at the community works funding. So we had originally looked, or we were, and we are looking at community works funding to help support that Bamfield West Mains transmission line replacement. And so if we get external funding, we can't use that money for stacking, we'll use our own reserves. And then we would like to reallocate that community works funding for more infrastructure replacement. So the community works funding is one of the sources that we want to apply to the Bamfield water system. And we think that there's a very strong argument that we put that money towards that. It's been supported by the board in the past. We think that'll continue. And then with the announcement that there is money, we suspect that they often will funnel that into infrastructure, which they do. So we will be applying through any of those strategic programs, which will likely open up in the next 4 months or so. So I think key for us and key for Eddie, we were talking this morning, is making sure that we have the next project on the books after we do the West Bamfield transmission main, start knocking off those problematic areas.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, that is the main push is the transmission line. Yeah, that's if we need, that's what we have to do. And like I said, Eddie indicated that would lower our operating costs anyway once that thing's repaired or replaced. Sorry, not repaired.
It should, yes. I mean, we do suspect that there is still a good amount of leakage that occurs in that West Bamfield submarine line. I think getting it replaced will reduce that leakage, will reduce our water production costs, which are climbing all the time. So it should, in theory, bring down the operating costs, yes.
So let me just make sure that I'm accurate in saying that if we go ahead with 6B, the motion that has been proposed, that that would include the increased parcel tax. Is that correct, Eddie, Jenny?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, much to my chagrin, but that's a political hat that I'm wearing as opposed to an operational hat. And what I'm hearing from John and Brian, you are in support of continuing with that increased parcel tax this time around.
Yeah, it's a tough one to push, but yeah, I don't see any way out.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. It's an easy one to defend, but a tough one to make people swallow. But it's if someone's got a better option, I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah, doesn't seem like we have it. But,
it's our history. So
yeah. That's fine. I mean, I can go back to Terry and say, Terry, can you try to find something else for us in the budget? So based on what I'm hearing, unless you gentlemen or staff have anything else to offer or suggest, can someone make the motion and read the motion out for me, please? 6B. If you have it in front of you. If you don't, I can read it out for you.
I'm happy to make the motion. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, thanks, John. I'll read it out for you. That the Bamfield Water Advisory Committee recommend that the Bamfield Water System Service Budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023-27 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw, and seconded by Brian McKay. Thank you. Any last discussion, comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Pass. Thank you very much for that. Item 7A, reports, Bamfield Water System 2022 Annual Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can speak to this a little bit and then take any questions. So again, this is our annual report that we bring every year, providing an overview of the Bamfield Water System operations for 2022. So all of the water quality targets continue to be met, and this includes no E. coli, coliform in any samples, the minimum residual throughout the system, less than 1 NTU turbidity, and then meeting the Canadian drinking water quality guidelines for all parameters. So again, this shows the excellent job that the treatment plant is doing and our water operator is doing within the system to meet these targets. Some of the targets not met that we've already kind of discussed include the contribution to capital per parcel, the unaccounted for water loss, and then the number of breaks within the system. The contribution to capital dropped from $376 per parcel in 2021 to $194 per parcel in 2022. We also saw operational costs increasing in 2022, which isn't a surprise given the economic climate. The operation and maintenance costs jumped to $248,000 compared to $183,000 in 2021. When we look at why, I think we can look at the unaccounted for water loss and the number of breaks within the system. Water production costs did climb in 2022. That includes the cost per chemicals. The cost per transportation was a big one. And then with the high number of leaks and having to produce more water, we saw a 33% increase in the number of pump and hauls that were needed. So it all kind of led to that increasing water production costs. We do continue and will continue to investigate ways to reduce the unaccounted for water loss within the system. This includes investigating leak detection equipment to kind of see where we can try to identify leaks before they become an issue. Before that water leaves the system, we've reached out to the city of Port Alberni and are potentially working with them. We've also reached out to Infrastruct about potentially coming in and doing a look through the system to kind of determine if we have any ongoing leakage. Some projects that were undertaken in 2022, I think the big one that we talked about in October was the development cost charge review. So this updated the DCC bylaw created in 1997. So we've gone through 3 readings at the board as per the best practices guide. We're just waiting final approval from the Inspector of Municipalities with the provincial government. And once we go that, it'll go to the board for adoption. So that will be a good one. As Jenny mentioned, that will give us a chance to really update that development cost charge fund as development occurs within Bamfield, as we suspect it will. 2023, we will be looking at potentially issuing an RFP for the engineering design and contract administration, as mentioned, for the West Bamfield submarine line. This will give us a chance to hopefully issue a tender early in 2024. And what that does is we found that by issuing the tender early, it gives us the best chance for best prices for replacement, because companies are then able to kind of fit it in where it works for them, price-wise, time-wise, and other project-wise. So we have found that does give us kind of best bang for our buck, so to speak. Once that project is complete, it will allow us to focus on other capital replacements within the system. I think for a long time, our focus has been centered on the West Bamfield transmission line because we knew how vital this infrastructure was and how close to nearing the end of its life it was. Once that's done, we have reached out to Coors Engineering, as Jenny did mention, to work on starting that capital replacement plan, which will identify other top priority projects within the system. So once we have that, it will include a Class D cost estimate and will allow us to plan towards future infrastructure upgrades and renewals. And Jenny mentioned always having a project shovel ready. It's something that we've used within our Beaver Creek water system. And it really does allow us to apply for grant projects or grant funds whenever they pop up. If we have a design ready, oh, there's a grant, good, we have this project, here you go, because you do need that design to apply for most of them. I think another key piece of 2023, as we all realize, is working on that long-term financial strategy. We've had the Coors long-range infrastructure plan presented to us last year. We had the asset management plan presented to us, and both of us flagged the need to proactively look to renew the system. So we do know there's a funding gap, as has been talked about already, and this long-term financial strategy and looking at what will need to be done to narrow the funding gap. We know we're not going to get to where we need to get right away, but we need to take steps towards getting there. So that is our annual report for 2022. Les, again, thank you for all your efforts. I think you're a big part of the system and meeting all those water quality targets. It's greatly appreciated, and we are open to take any questions on this.
Great. John, you've unmuted, so go ahead.
Eddie, the pump and haul, have we got a situation yet where we can dump that in Bamfield in the sewage system?
Thank you. Through the chair. We're working on that. We don't have the system available to us quite yet, but it is something we have identified and we are looking to work towards. I think when we talk about the sewer system in Bamfield and we have that there, we are definitely investigating the option to reduce those pump and hauls.
Great, thank you.
I have a couple questions or comments. The water loss, and I've got two screens open, and I don't want to go to the annual report and lose my place here. But we've got roughly a 25% water loss. Is that correct?
Yes, through the chair, and yes, that is correct. Water loss unaccounted for within the system was 25% in 2022, but it was down from 27% in 2021, and it is consistent with other systems. When we look at the Beaver Creek water system, we're right around that 25% mark as well. And I just think that it's hard to get to 15%. 15% is a great goal. We want to do whatever we can to reduce that, but I think 25% is pretty close to what we could and should expect given the infrastructure.
So thank you for clarifying that. I must admit, a quarter of our water use, is being lost someplace. And I'm wondering how much of that in the year would be contributed to the submarine line. So if the submarine line was brand spanking new, what would our water loss, look like, do you think? And I know it's not another crystal ball question, but what are your thoughts between Jenny, Eddie, and Les?
Yeah, let me start on this, Mr. Chair, and I think Les can jump in on this a little bit as well. It's hard to say exactly, I think. I think we can estimate what it would be, and I think when we look towards the replacement of the line, we will take steps to have equipment, materials to measure that flow, so we know exactly what is going through the transmission line, and for future and 20, 30 years down the line, when leaks, knock on wood, hopefully don't show up, but if they do, we'll be able to measure that. I do think, Les, you may be able to quantify this a little bit better.
Yeah, so I can only measure indirectly by using the newer water meter at McKay Bay there. It's a mag meter, so I can measure in both directions. And by closing valves, I can force the water to go through that meter. But I can't. So I can measure the whole west side and with the transmission line, and then just the west side, and then deduct the west side from the total number, and that gives me a rough idea. And the last estimate was I believe it was around 20, less than 20 cubic meters a day. And then it also looked like there was a leak along Cape Beal Trail, about the same. So those two, if we're pumping 200 cubes a day, average through the year, we're looking at 10% right there. And what Eddie said about having a measuring device in the pipe, I think any new pipes going in, we should look at them very carefully so that we can make some method of measuring the flow through those pipes, and then we can narrow down the area where the leak where a leak is. So if we have a measuring device on the new pipe coming across, I'll know right away whether the leak is on the east side or the west side, and how much leakage there is. Moving forward, if we do, if we put some measuring devices in the right places, because now the water costs money to produce, as in the past, who really cared? It was just 10 liters a second. You dump in a bunch of chlorine, and you're good to go. Now the water is throttled by the water treatment plant, the chemicals, the electricity, the wear and tear, the shipping of the waste, everything adds up, and it's quite expensive to produce water now. So leaks are just that much more important, and I do believe that the main transmission line is leaking.
Okay. Let me go on to Bamfield Marine Science Center. Do they pay for their water?
Yes, they do.
Okay. The gas tax, Jenny, sorry for using the old term, but so the board passed, the previous board passed a motion agreeing to put, was it $500,000 or $800,000 towards the submarine line? So I want to back up a little bit so that I think I understood what you said, is that if we get the new grant, the large grant, that that gas tax money would still be available for other capital water projects. Is that what I heard?
Yes, Chair. So the process will be, so the current gas tax amount is still sitting in the budget and approved for Bamfield to spend on the West Transmission Main. I think it's in 2024.
Yeah.
And so that money is there. And if we received grant money, staff will be making a recommendation for I think it goes to the committee of the whole to make any adjustments to how we spend our gas tax money. And so we'll be going to the committee to approve reallocating that money. We're going to be recommending it stays within the Bamfield water system, but is allocated towards a different project.
Okay. I just have a couple more, guys, and then we can get on with the motion, or we can go back to John and Brian for comments. The freezing, the temperatures and the breaks that we've had, and I'm not a year-round resident. I haven't been there all that long compared to the three gentlemen that I see in front of my screen. But is the weather, is there typically a freezing period every winter? Is this relatively new? And the reason I ask that question is, will we ever get to a point where we don't have our lines frozen, creating breaks and leakages? You know what I'm saying? Like eventually, if it freezes enough, we'll find all our weak spots. What's the situation with freezing, and if it is continuing to be problematic, how do we mitigate that?
Yeah, it's always froze. If anything, it's not freezing as much as it used to. I recall 30-35 years ago when the bay out in front of our place would freeze over, the sloughs would all freeze. I haven't seen that in years. So if anything, it's it's not getting any worse, and I don't think it will.
Good.
It's just the cost of doing business. We just got to deal with it.
Okay.
And I'll just, I just have one note as well here through the chair. So in 2022, when we look at the number of breaks, yes, there were 25. 20 of those did occur in January. And this was a direct result of that cold snap that I think happened in the first couple of weeks of January. So that was a big portion of the leaks, and that was that incredibly, I think it was a little bit out of characteristic to be that cold when it was.
Go ahead, John.
Eddie, were those all on private property?
No, those aren't the leaks. We don't measure the leaks on private property as a part of this report. These are the ones that occur. I think most of them, unless, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot were near the services, but not actually on the private property.
Almost all the leaks were past the water meters due to freezing. But anything new obviously will be protected from freezing much better than it was in the past. So hopefully things will get better. But the big problems have been past the water meters.
When you say past meters, you mean in private
Yes.
service?
Yes.
So they were, in private property. Okay, that's what I assumed. Yeah.
Those, like, it happened this Christmas, and it happened last Christmas, and almost all the problems were past the meters.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Les, are those folks who are not there and because there's no water being used, so it freezes the lines?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will turn people's water off. I mean, a lot of people do it themselves, but I'll turn people's water on and off. And I'm very active, recommending that when people are not here, that they turn their water off. And then there's ones that I know that aren't turned off, that I have to keep checking them because they're suspicious. Like, so. But, yeah.
Maybe one thing we can do is, now that we have a communications person, is we could work on a better campaign pre-winter because it really is the responsibility of the homeowner to either let Les know or deal with it. But I think that it's a good point, and we could do a reach out campaign, corkboard, something, and try and get people to remember to do that, because it's also a cost to them, a huge cost, not just to us, but a real pain for them.
Okay, John, Brian, any other comments or questions? If not, would one of you move 7A, please? And for those that don't have the agenda up in front of them, that the motion would be that the Bamfield Water Advisory Committee receives this report for information. John moves that, and seconded by Brian McKay. I'll just make a comment that I would like to thank all of the staff, including Les, our operator, for doing a great job, with a bit of a pig's ear system. If we can get these other grants and get some money in the bank, then we can put some lipstick on it, and we'll be a whole lot better at the end of the day. So all in favor of that motion? And that passes as well. Thank you very much. Eddie, do we have any late business?
I do not believe we have any late business, no.
And under section 9, do we have any comments or questions from the public?
I do not believe we have.
Can't believe that we don't have hundreds of people participating and zooming in on today's meeting. That being the case, we're going to go to item number 10, which is in camera. I'll read the motion and then ask for one of you gentlemen to move the motion. A motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter, section I-92 B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the regional district and the provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party. So in other words, as you know, gentlemen, we want to move to in camera. So would someone move that motion for me, please? And John Mass moves the motion, seconded by Brian McKay. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you very much. We will have to stop Zooming or live